Before we get started, there will be spoilers for the 1000-Year Blood War arc of Bleach and the light novel Can't Fear Your Own World in the video to come. The sadistic and villainous Tokinada Tsunayashiro is the evil at the heart of the events of Can't Fear Your Own World, attempting to bring ruin and despair to the universe of Bleach. Outside of witnessing his nefarious schemes unfold, one of the best things about Tokinada is that he acts as a real window into the sinister world of the noble houses of Soul Society. Something that, beyond the realm of the Kuchiki and Shihoin clans, has mostly gone totally overlooked in Bleach. And so, through him, we get to really see and understand the twisted influence the most powerful of these houses actually have, and how much control they truly wield both in the shadows and out. Can't Fear Your Own World also introduces us to Enrakyōten, perhaps one of the most powerful Zanpakuto in the series. With it, Tokinada is capable of taking on several of the Gotei 13's strongest soldiers, along with a coalition of their assorted allies at the time, made up of Arrancar, Quincy, and Fullbringers. But this immense power comes with a terrible price, a price only someone who views life as totally meaningless would be willing to pay. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the ancient evil blade of Enrakyōten, its powers, its weaknesses, its history, and its wielder, as well as how it's used by Tokinada to try and overpower his enemies. So, let's take a look. First of all, a little more context about Tokinada Tsunayashiro, the last owner of Enrakyōten. As the main antagonist of the light novel trilogy Can't Fear Your Own World, Tokinada learned of the Soul Society's original sin committed against the Soul King in the Primordial Age. Realizing that everything they had ever built, the Soul Society, Waco Mundo, and the world of the living, was born out of such a malicious and cruel act, Tokinada decided that the world around him was meaningless, and that the only way to live in such a contemptible existence was to do so with nothing but pure malice and sadism. After orchestrating his rise to the position of head of the Tsunayashiro noble family, perhaps the strongest and most influential of all the aristocracy, Tokinada used his far-reaching power to scheme against the Soul Society, hoping to completely dismantle the current way of the world and throw everyone around him into an endless despair. Tokinada's plan involved creating and supplanting the current Soul King with a new puppet substitute in the form of the child Hikone, before creating untold chaos by revealing the existence of the afterlife to the inhabitants of the world of the living, resulting in the breakdown of all things and the status quo as everyone knew it. Aside from his nihilistic nature and ambition to topple the world order, one of the things that makes Tokinada so dangerous is his Zanpakuto, Enrakyōten, which is what we're truly here to talk about. The idea of ancestral Zanpakuto was first introduced in the source material by the battle between Kyoraku Shunsui and Leelbaro, in which Nanao Ise wields her family's sacred ceremonial blade, Shinken Hakyoken. Later, in Can't Fear Your Own World, the ancestral Zanpakuto belonging to the Tsunayashiro family is revealed to be Enrakyōten, one of the oldest and perhaps most powerful Zanpakuto in existence. Additionally, as an aside, it's also revealed that the Kuchiki clan has an ancestral Zanpakuto of its own, Muramasa, which of course was made famous by the Zanpakuto Rebellion filler arc. Enrakyōten itself exudes an evil presence. Upon being activated with the release command Sip from the Four Seas, the heavenly shores entwine, equally duplicate 10,000s, and sharpen, Enrakyōten emits a sinister reiatsu that causes those around it to tremble with unease. As another quick aside, I actually really like the Viz translation of Enrakyōten's release command as well, which is Sip the world and wear the horizon, duplicate and curtail all of creation equally. Regardless, both commands carry the same weight, the idea that this Zanpakuto is so strong as to draw from the essence of the very world itself before being able to duplicate anything in existence. Obviously it's conceptual and abstract, but I think it works really well, reinforcing the gravity of this ancient relic. Personally, I love the imagery surrounding the line "Where the horizon." It makes me think that the wielder of this sword would want to bend the world to their will and make it their own, which is in a sense what Tokinada is after, although not quite. However, despite the weapon's seeming grandiose standing befitting of an all-powerful noble family, Tokinada himself keeps its true nature and power hidden by addressing the Zanpakuto with a false name and release command. The false version of Enrakyōten is referred to as Kuten Kyokoku, with the command Revere. The fake name was chosen as an insult to Kyoraku Shunsui, as it sounds similar to his Zanpakuto's name, Katen Kyokotsu. The false version of Enrakyōten Shikai has the ability to bounce any oncoming attack back towards the attacker like a mirror reflecting light. In this sense, it's similar, I guess, to weapons like Sogyo no Kotowari and even Nanao's aforementioned Shinken Hakyoken. And interestingly, this isn't the first time a fake Zanpakuto has been associated with mirrors, as Aizen lied to everyone in the Gotei 13, claiming that Kyoka Suigetsu's power was in fact to do with mirrors, with mist and fog, utilising it to confuse the enemy. But what can Enrakyōten itself do? Why is this Zanpakuto so powerful? Meaning Law of the Bewitching Lucid Mirror, which again is an awesome name. Upon activation, Enrakyōten emits a blinding silver light before the blade itself becomes invisible. I think this is to reflect the fact that the sword is no longer using its own identity, so to speak, if that makes sense, as we'll see in a moment. Basically, once Shikai is activated, what Enrakyōten itself looks like is meaningless, so the Zanpakuto materializes a physical embodiment of that fact. Put simply, Enrakyōten has the ability to mimic the power of any Zanpakuto its current wielder has seen in action before. So, if Tokinada himself bore witness to any Zanpakuto abilities at any point throughout his entire life, by the time he then picks up and uses Enrakyōten, the blade will be able to replicate those powers flawlessly. It's quite an interesting Zanpakuto, really, when you get into the weeds of it. It sounds extremely powerful, to the point where it is probably broken, but when you also think about it, it requires certain very special circumstances to be able to be used to its fullest potential. For example, in the story of Bleach, we as readers see a lot of Zanpakuto abilities, but that's only really because the story takes place across several wartime periods due to the nature of the narrative. For the vast majority of Shinigami across presumably centuries worth of time, the vast majority of them won't be involved in wars of this kind of scale. What I'm trying to say is, seeing so many Zanpakuto abilities in fairly quick succession, especially so many high-ranking abilities, doesn't seem like the norm to me. Again though, it would make sense that of any character, Tokinada would benefit the most from prolonged war and battle. Then of course there's the small fact that the wielder of Enrakyōten would actually need to witness all of these different powers themselves in order to get the most out of the blade. Again, Tokinada is in a special position where his family are in charge of surveillance, essentially, to ensure the history of Soul Society is constantly being recorded, so he's been an observer of almost every single battle unfolding to date. When you combine those, I would argue, two fairly unlikely circumstances, as we see in Can't Fear Your Own World, then yeah, Enrakyōten has the potential to be one of, if not the most powerful Zanpakuto in Bleach. It's kind of interesting then that Enrakyōten belongs to the noble house that's in charge of surveillance and therefore has access to all of this footage. Considering how duplicitous we know the Tsunayashiro family to be, it wouldn't surprise me if they campaigned to be in charge of surveillance like that in order to eventually maybe make the most out of their Zanpakuto. Also, Enrakyōten can even mimic several different powers at once, allowing Tokinada to wield multiple abilities from various Zanpakuto. Interestingly, Enrakyōten has a, well, I don't think you can call it a weakness necessarily. It could be an advantage or a disadvantage depending on who is wielding it at the time, but it has an intriguing caveat, let's say, to its near limitless power. The strength of the individual Zanpakuto abilities being mimicked by Enrakyōten are scaled to the Reiatsu of its current wielder. meaning the abilities being used could either be stronger or weaker than when being used by their true owner. Tokinada himself is probably roughly, I would say, a mid-tier captain class Shinigami. He's a member of a very high-ranking noble house, so he will innately have quite a high level of Raryoku, meaning he's capable of wielding most of these powers at a fairly strong and consistent level. For a few examples of this, let's look at how Tokinada uses Enrakyōten during his all-out battle with the Gotei and their allies. Tokinada is able to mimic a large variety of Zanpakuto, including Ryujinjaka, Senbonzakura, Kinshara, Tenken, Hyorinmaru, Kyokusuigetsu, Suzumebachi, Shinzo, Hisagamaru, Wabisuke, Gegetsuburi, Haineko, Suzumushi, Ruriro Kujaku, Tsuchinamazu, and even the Zanpakuto of the long-deceased 7th Kenpachi, Kenpachi Kurayashiki's Gagaku Kairo. I'm not going to look at every single one of these examples, but there are a few instances that really show how Tokinada's level of Reiatsu affects his usage of the particular Zanpakuto. At one point early on in the battle, Tokinada is heavily injured, but heals himself to a great degree using Hanataro's Hisagamaru. While Kyoraku is surprised that Hisagamaru is able to heal such grievous wounds, Tokinada notes that he has far greater Reiatsu than Hanataro, meaning Hisagamaru's healing capabilities are currently far higher. Conversely, when Harabel attacks Tokinada using a surge of water, the villain attempts to use Ryujinjaka to defend himself. Although he's successful in evaporating the water, Kyoraku notes that Ryujinjaka's flames under Tokinada's control are far weaker and less intense than when Yamamoto would use them in the past. Those are, of course, two extreme examples on the opposite end of the scale. The fact is, with Tokinada's Reiatsu being where it is, he's capable of using almost all of the Captain class Zanpakuto in the same manner as their true owners. For example, when he strikes Yoruichi with Suzumebachi, he'd likely have been able to kill her with a second stab, in the same way Soifon would have, and he shows a similar level of control over Senbonzakura to Byakuya. One notable exception to Enrakyōten's power is Zangetsu. While the ancestral blade can mimic the appearance of Ichigo's Zanpakuto, it is unable to replicate its power. This idea of Reiatsu scaling makes me wonder what the upper limit is on Enrakyōten, if it even has one. But even more interesting than that, I'd love to see the full power of these Zanpakuto that we know well in action. Imagine if someone as monstrous as Yamamoto, Aizen, or Ichigo got hold of Enrakyōten. With almost limitless wells of Reiatsu at their disposal, every single mimicked blade would be operating at over 100% of their capacity. They'd potentially be able to wield powers the likes of which we've never seen before. Take Hyorinmaru, for example. Presumably, someone like Aizen would be able to mimic the incredible strength of Hitsugaya's completed bankai, but for as long as he's wielding Enrakyōten, it wouldn't have the time limit on it that Hitsugaya presumably currently has. That being said, I assume only someone who is part of the Tsunayashiro family could wield this Zanpakuto. It is kind of hard to say. There is one enormous drawback to using Enrakyōten, however, something we alluded to at the start of this video. A price so high that while many of the Tsunayashiro clan were tempted by its power, they refused ultimately to wield the blade. While using Enrakyōten, the owner's remaining lifespan is shortened dramatically, their vitality drained as they continuously use the sinister, almost vampiric weapon. The effect is so great, it seems, that Kyoraku even confronted Tokinada over his choice to wield Enrakyōten, questioning why he would be so willing to allow his own life to be sapped away, gambling it just to wreak havoc across the world. As if to reinforce the ominous, life-stealing nature of the Zanpakuto, the wielder is also required to be injured in order to fully release the blade, as if letting Enrakyōten in via their weakened form, like a blight on their soul. And that's it for our short primer on Enrakyōten, the disturbing ancestral Zanpakuto of the Tsunayashiro noble house. Normally, I find abilities like the power to copy other powers to be a little uninspired, but I think the way Enrakyōten applies it here really works, and I love the overtly menacing nature of the blade as well. I really do like the caveat as well that the capability of each mimicked Zanpakuto depends on the level of Reiatsu the wielder actually has, and I love the fact as well that a Zanpakuto can go way beyond what its true owner is actually currently capable of. But that's it for the video, and as always, I really hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to let me know down in the comments what you think of Tokinada Tsunayashiro and his blade Enrakyōten. Do you think it's a cool power? Do you think it was well used in Can't Fear Your Own World? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you could, which Zanpakuto would you like to see going beyond 100% of its capabilities as currently wielded by its true owner? Personally, I think it'd be awesome to see what Tenken is maybe capable of beyond Komamura's own usage. I wonder if it could summon a different gigantic suit of armor, maybe one that's even more powerful, more impervious to attacks. There are so many potential options here. Really, I'd love to see them all. And as always, guys, I'd like to end this video by saying a massive thank you to my supporters over on Patreon. As always, I really do appreciate each and every one of you. It really does mean the absolute world to me that you choose to support me over there. And again, I can't thank you enough. If you like what I do here on YouTube and you want to support me on Patreon as well, you can do just that to get your name in the credits like this and to get every video I release absolutely ad-free. Alright guys, but that's it from me, and until next time I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.